Number 1. The island where America hides its money. Every year, thousands of the wealthiest people on the planet quietly pack up their lives in New York, Chicago, and California, and move to a strip of land barely 12 miles long and a few blocks wide. Palm Beach, Florida. Population under 9,000. Average home price north of $6 million. Zero state income tax. And a shoreline so guarded, so hedge-lined, so obsessively private that most Americans driving down its main road have no idea they're passing some of the most valuable real estate on Earth. This isn't Miami. It isn't Beverly Hills. Palm Beach doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't need to. The people who live here already know, and the people who don't are exactly who they want kept out. But here's what will keep you watching. How does a town this small produce more billionaires per square mile than almost anywhere else in the country? Why did one former president turn a private club here into his unofficial winter White House? And why, behind the manicured hedges and Rolls-Royces, is there a version of Palm Beach that almost never makes it onto Instagram? One involving century-old feuds, hurricane evacuations for the ultra-rich, and a housing market so brutal it's pricing out families who've lived here for generations. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from and what your local time is right now. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Number 2. The man who built an island out of nothing. To understand Palm Beach, you have to go back to 1893, decades before anyone called it a playground for the rich. Back then, this stretch of coastline was mostly mangrove swamp and coconut groves, cut off from the rest of Florida by water on almost every side. Then came Henry Flagler, a co-founder of Standard Oil alongside John D. Rockefeller. Flagler had already made one fortune. Now, he wanted to build another, this time out of Florida itself. He extended his railroad down the coast, all the way to this remote barrier island, and built 2 massive hotels designed to lure Gilded Age millionaires south for the winter. The Royal Poinciana Hotel could hold 2,000 guests. The Breakers, which still stands today, became the winter address for America's most powerful families, the Vanderbilts, the Kennedys, the Rockefellers themselves. Flagler didn't just build hotels, he built an entire idea, the idea that the ultra-wealthy needed a private escape from the cold, from the cities, and eventually from everyone else. By the 1920s, Palm Beach had shifted from hotel guests to permanent estates. Architect Addison Mizner arrived and reshaped the entire town in a Mediterranean revival style. Pink stucco, red tile roofs, arched doorways that still defines Palm Beach today. Mizner didn't just design buildings. He designed a fantasy, one where old European aristocracy met new American money, and the result became the blueprint for what old Palm Beach is supposed to look like. That fantasy never really left. Walk down Worth Avenue today, and you're walking through Mizner's imagination, just with more zeros attached to the price tags. What most people don't realize is how deliberate all of this was. Flagler wasn't just building resorts, he was engineering an entire social class's winter migration pattern, one that still holds today. For years, the only way onto the island was through his hotels or his trains. He controlled the gate before the gate even had hedges on it. Mizner, for his part, arrived in Palm Beach, recovering from a broken leg and a string of failed business ventures out west. He had no formal architectural training. What he had was an instinct for theater. He'd studied old Spanish and Italian buildings on his travels, and instead of copying them exactly, he aged his new construction artificially, chipping plaster, staining stucco, cracking tiles on purpose, so that a house built in 1922 looked like it had survived 4 centuries. Buyers loved it. They weren't just purchasing a home, they were purchasing the illusion of old-world lineage they didn't actually have. That illusion became the entire economic engine of the island. To this day, zoning boards in Palm Beach scrutinize new construction with an obsessiveness that borders on theatrical, insisting on tile roofs, specific stucco textures, arched windows, all in service of maintaining Misner's fantasy nearly a century after he sketched his first villa here. It's worth pausing here, because this origin story explains almost everything that comes later in this documentary. Every rule, every hedge height dispute, every zoning fight we're about to cover traces back to this founding idea that Palm Beach should feel timeless, untouchable, and slightly out of reach, even for the people who can technically afford to buy in. Number 3. The world's most expensive main street you've never heard of. Worth Avenue is 4 blocks long. 4. You could walk the entire thing in under 10 minutes. And yet this short stretch of sidewalk generates more retail revenue per square foot than almost any shopping district in America. Chanel, Cartier, Hermes, all crammed into pastel-colored buildings with wrought iron balconies and secret courtyards called villas, hidden alleyways lined with fountains and boutiques that most tourists walk right past without noticing. Locals know the villas, tourists don't. That's kind of the whole point of Palm Beach. Here's the detail that surprises people. Worth Avenue isn't really built for tourists at all. Store staff are trained to recognize regular clients on site. Many boutiques don't display prices. If you have to ask, the assumption is you probably shouldn't be shopping there in the first place. And yet, drive 2 minutes off Worth Avenue and you'll find modest bungalows, workers heading to shifts at the hotels and country clubs, and a very different Palm Beach entirely, one built to serve the wealth next door rather than share in it. That gap between the 4 blocks of Worth Avenue and everything surrounding it is the real story of this island. There's a rhythm to how Worth Avenue actually operates behind the scenes. Many of the boutiques here don't rely on walk-in traffic at all. Instead, sales associates maintain private client books, sometimes with only a few dozen names on them. People whose preferences, sizes, and spending habits are tracked meticulously across years. When a new shipment arrives, the best pieces never even make it to the display window. They're called ahead to specific clients first. The villas themselves have their own quiet history. Misner designed them intentionally as a kind of maze, narrow, shaded passageways meant to slow foot traffic down, to make wandering feel like discovery rather than shopping. Some of these courtyards contain fountains imported from actual Italian villas, along with tilework Misner salvaged from demolished European buildings. Nobody advertises this. You either know which archway to duck through, or you walk right past the most beautiful part of the entire avenue without ever noticing it exists. Number 4. The Winter White House nobody saw coming. In 1927, financier and serial heir Marjorie Merriweather Post built Mar-a-Lago, a 128-room mansion designed to be the grandest private residence in America. She eventually donated it to the federal government, hoping it would become an official presidential retreat. For decades, the government didn't want it. Maintenance costs were too high, and no president took her up on the offer. Eventually, it was returned to the Post Foundation, and in 1985, Donald Trump purchased it and converted it into a private club. What happened next changed Palm Beach permanently. Suddenly, this quiet, old-money enclave became one of the most politically significant addresses in the country, hosting foreign dignitaries, campaign events, and eventually functioning as a genuine seat of presidential power during winter months. Motorcades, Secret Service checkpoints, airspace restrictions over an island that used to worry about nothing louder than a hedge trimmer. Longtime residents were split. Some embraced the attention. Others, the old money families who'd spent generations trying to keep Palm Beach quiet and invisible, were furious. The clash between old Palm Beach discretion and new Palm Beach spectacle became one of the island's defining tensions, and honestly, it still hasn't fully resolved. The scale of Post's original vision is almost hard to comprehend today. She imported Dorian stone from Genoa, specifically aged to look centuries old before it even arrived in Florida. The living room ceiling alone took Austrian and Hungarian craftsmen years to complete. Hand-painted panels depicting mythological scenes, shipped across the Atlantic in pieces and reassembled on-site. When it reopened as a private club, membership fees climbed steadily over the decades, eventually reaching six figures just to join, with additional annual dues on top. The waitlist, when there was one, wasn't really about money at all. It was about vetting, about ensuring new members fit a certain image the club wanted to project. That image became inseparable from national politics in a way nobody in 1927 could have predicted. Number 5. The hedge that costs more than most people's houses. If you've ever driven along South Ocean Boulevard, you've probably noticed something strange. You can't actually see the ocean or the mantle, just endless walls of hedges, 12, sometimes 20 feet tall, running for miles along the coast. This is intentional, and it's practically a Palm Beach institution. Homeowners here spend staggering amounts, sometimes over $100,000 a year, just on hedge maintenance, all in service of a single goal: total invisibility from the road. Paparazzi have been chased off by private security for even attempting a drone shot over some of these estates. The irony is that many of these hedge-hidden mansions sit on properties worth $20, $50, sometimes over $100 million, and the owners would rather you never know they exist at all. There's an unspoken rule in Palm Beach that visibility equals vulnerability. The truly wealthy here aren't trying to be seen. They're trying to disappear in plain sight. Compare that to Miami, where wealth is loud: glass towers, rooftop pools, Lamborghinis parked outside nightclubs for the cameras. Palm Beach operates on the opposite philosophy entirely. The wealthier you are, the less anyone should know your name. The hedges themselves have become something of an arms race between neighbors. When one estate raises its privacy wall of ficus or clusia to 18 feet, the property next door often follows within a year, not wanting to feel exposed by comparison. There's also a quieter enforcement mechanism at play. Palm Beach's Architectural Commission reviews landscaping changes alongside building changes and disputes over hedge height, over sight lines, over whether a new wall blocks a neighbor's previously private view of the ocean, have occasionally ended up in actual litigation. Number 6. The island that quietly runs on unpaid labor and six-figure salaries. Here's something almost nobody outside the industry knows. Palm Beach's private clubs, the ones with wait lists that can run a decade or longer, pay some of their staff extraordinarily well, specifically to guarantee discretion. A locker room attendant at one of the island's exclusive golf clubs can earn well over $80,000 a year in salary and tips combined. Why? Because that attendant sees things, overhears business deals worth billions, handles the personal items of people whose names appear on Forbes lists. The premium isn't for folding towels, it's for silence. Meanwhile, across the bridge in West Palm Beach, the workforce that keeps this entire operation running, groundskeepers, hotel staff, restaurant workers, commutes in every single day because they simply cannot afford to live on the island they maintain. Rental prices in Palm Beach proper are often triple what workers earn in a month, forcing an entire labor force to live somewhere else and cross the bridge just to keep the lights on for people who will never know their names. It's a strange kind of ecosystem: extraordinary wealth on one side of the water, essential labor commuting in from the other, and a very thin, very guarded bridge connecting the two worlds. Many of these club employees sign strict non-disclosure agreements before their first shift, sometimes more detailed than the paperwork executives sign at Fortune 500 companies. Talking to press about a member, even something as trivial as what someone ordered for lunch, can be grounds for immediate termination. Some longtime staff members have worked at the same club for 30 or 40 years, present for weddings, funerals, and everything in between. Yet almost entirely invisible in how those families talk about their own lives publicly. Number 7. The storm that tests billionaires like everyone else. When a hurricane bears down on South Florida, Palm Beach doesn't get a pass. Mandatory evacuation orders apply to everyone, regardless of net worth, and for a few chaotic days every hurricane season, the island's normal social order gets completely scrambled. Private jets at Palm Beach International Airport fill up fast as residents scramble north or west. But here's the twist: not everyone leaves. Some of the wealthiest homeowners actually stay, riding out major storms inside reinforced estates, built specifically to withstand hurricane-force winds, sometimes with underground bunkers, industrial generators, and enough supplies to last weeks without power. Meanwhile, the same hedges that provide privacy become genuine hazards, flying debris in hurricane winds, and the barrier island's low elevation means storm surge risk is a constant, expensive concern. Flood insurance premiums on some of these coastal estates run into the tens of thousands annually, a bill that would shock most homeowners anywhere else in America. There's something almost humbling about it. For a few days, each hurricane season, wind and water don't care how many zeros are in your bank account. The ocean that built Palm Beach's mystique is the same ocean that occasionally threatens to reclaim it. Construction standards on the island reflect this reality in ways most visitors never notice. Newer estates are frequently built with impact-rated glass, rated to withstand direct debris strikes at over 150 miles per hour. Poured concrete walls, reinforced far beyond standard Florida building code, and elevated foundations designed to handle storm surge that older, historic homes simply weren't built for. After major storms, the recovery process on the island moves at a different speed than almost anywhere else in Florida. Private contractors, often booked exclusively by wealthy homeowners years in advance through standing retainer agreements, can have crews clearing debris and restoring power to individual estates within hours, while public crews work through the rest of the region on a much longer timeline. Number 8. The feud that split the island in two. Not everyone in Palm Beach gets along, and one of the island's quieter but longest-running tensions is between what locals call old money and new money. Old money families, some with roots on the island going back to the Flagler era, tend to value understatement. Modest cars despite 8-figure net worths, country club memberships passed down for generations, a deep discomfort with anything that draws outside attention. New money, often finance executives, tech founders, and celebrities who've relocated in the past 2 decades, brought a different energy entirely. Flashier renovations, bigger parties, more visible security details, and a willingness to be photographed that old money families find almost distasteful. This tension plays out in surprisingly petty ways. Battles over historic preservation zoning, disputes over how tall a new construction's hedges are allowed to be, arguments at town council meetings about whether a new owner's Mediterranean revival isn't quite Misner enough. It sounds trivial from the outside, but in a town this small, these disputes can drag on for years and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, all over aesthetic disagreements about what Palm Beach is supposed to look like. The result is a town that looks completely unified from a distance, all pink stucco and manicured lawns, but is quietly fractured beneath the surface between people who've been here for a century and people who arrived last decade with a much bigger checkbook. The club system makes this divide even more concrete. Certain golf and social clubs on the island have maintained the same membership rolls, passed down through wills and family trusts, for nearly 100 years, and getting in as an outsider, no matter your net worth, often requires years of quiet social vetting. Meanwhile, newer clubs, some built specifically to cater to recently arrived finance and tech money, have sprung up nearby, with much faster entry, higher fees, and a noticeably different social atmosphere, louder, more transactional, less concerned with pedigree than with simply being able to write the check. Number 9. The price tag nobody talks about. Let's talk numbers, because this is where Palm Beach stops sounding like a fantasy and starts sounding almost impossible. Median home price on the island regularly exceeds $6 million. Waterfront estates routinely list above $20 million, and the truly exceptional properties, the ones with direct ocean frontage and historic pedigree, can sell for well over $100 million. In 2022, a single estate on the island sold for around $122 million, one of the highest residential sale prices in American history at that time. But here's what makes Palm Beach different from other ultra-expensive American zip codes. Florida has no state income tax. For a hedge fund manager or business owner moving from New York or Connecticut, relocating to Palm Beach can mean saving tens of millions of dollars annually in state taxes alone. That single fact has driven an enormous wave of financial firms, literally relocating their headquarters to the area, transforming a stretch of coastline once known mainly for winter vacations into a legitimate rival to Wall Street itself, sometimes nicknamed Wall Street South. Property taxes are still substantial. Homestead exemptions only go so far when your home is worth 8 figures. But compared to the income tax burden these residents were paying up north, the math is overwhelming. It's not just lifestyle pulling people to Palm Beach anymore, it's spreadsheets. The ripple effects of this migration extend well beyond individual home sales. Commercial office space in nearby West Palm Beach, once considered a sleepy secondary market, has seen rents climb dramatically as major investment firms lease entire floors of new glass towers just minutes from the island itself. Private schools nearby have seen application numbers surge, with some now maintaining multi-year wait lists for kindergarten spots as relocating families try to secure a stable, prestigious education pipeline for their children. Number 10. What it actually costs to just visit. You don't need to buy a $100 million mansion to experience Palm Beach, but even a modest visit here costs more than most vacations anywhere else in Florida. A basic hotel room during peak winter season, January through March, easily runs $400 to $600 a night. And that's before you factor in resort fees, valet parking that can hit $50 a day, and restaurant menus where a simple lunch salad might run $30. Public beach access does exist, and it's actually one of the more democratic parts of the island. Florida law guarantees public beach access below the high tide line, so technically anyone can walk the sand in front of even the grandest estates. But parking near those beaches is deliberately limited and expensive, sometimes $20 an hour, a quiet but effective way of controlling who actually shows up. If you want the classic Palm Beach experience without the classic Palm Beach price tag, locals suggest visiting in the off-season, June through September, when snowbirds have left, hotel rates drop by half, and you can walk Worth Avenue without fighting for a parking spot. The trade-off is brutal humidity and the ever-present hurricane risk, but for travelers on a real budget, it's the only version of Palm Beach that's remotely affordable. There are a few insider tricks longtime visitors swear by. Lunch menus at even the fanciest restaurants on the island are often dramatically cheaper than dinner, sometimes half the price for nearly identical dishes, since the wealthy residents who dine there in the evening rarely bother showing up for a midday meal. And renting a bike, rather than driving, is often the smartest way to actually see the island, since the wealthiest streets are also some of the quietest and most bike-friendly in the entire state. Number 11. The quiet migration reshaping the whole town. Since around 2020, Palm Beach has seen an enormous influx of new residents, hedge fund executives, private equity founders, and finance firms relocating entirely from New York. Some estimates put the number of financial firms that have opened Palm Beach offices in just a few years at over 100. This migration has completely reshaped the local real estate market. Homes that once sat on the market for months now sell in days, sometimes in bidding wars that push final prices 30 or 40% above asking. Longtime residents, some who've owned modest homes here for decades, are suddenly sitting on properties worth many times what they paid, but many are also being priced out of the surrounding rental market entirely, unable to afford to stay in the town where they've lived their whole lives. Restaurants that used to close for the entire summer, when the wealthy winter residents traditionally left, are now staying open year-round, because there's simply a permanent, wealthy population here now instead of a seasonal one. The rhythm of the town, once defined by a clear season, from Thanksgiving to Easter, is slowly disappearing, replaced by a version of Palm Beach that never really empties out anymore. Number 12. The truth about who actually belongs here. Here's the uncomfortable reality underneath all the pink stucco and hedge-lined streets. Palm Beach was never designed to be inclusive, and for much of its history, that exclusivity was explicit rather than just implied. For decades, several of the island's most prestigious clubs maintained unofficial policies restricting membership by religion and race, a practice that persisted well into the late 20th century in various forms. Some of that history is still visible today, in which clubs certain families belong to and which they conspicuously don't. Modern Palm Beach is more diverse than its historical reputation, but the underlying structure, exclusive clubs, opaque membership processes, unwritten social rules about who gets invited where, hasn't disappeared so much as become more subtle. You can buy your way onto the island. You often can't buy your way into every room on it. That tension between what money can buy and what generational belonging still controls might be the single most defining thing about Palm Beach. It's a town where the wealthiest new arrival and the old money family down the street can live two houses apart and never actually be part of the same social world at all. Number 13. The shrinking middle that used to hold the island together. Long before hedge funds and celebrities discovered Palm Beach, there was a modest, working middle class that actually lived on the island itself. Teachers, shopkeepers, retirees on fixed incomes who'd bought small cottages decades ago when prices were still reasonable. That population has been quietly disappearing for years. Property tax reassessments tied to skyrocketing land values have made it financially impossible for many long-time middle-class homeowners to stay, even in houses they own outright. A widow living in a modest 3-bedroom cottage her husband bought in the 1970s might now be sitting on a property worth $4 million, but the property tax bill alone can run tens of thousands annually, forcing a choice between selling to a developer or slowly draining savings just to keep the lights on in a house that's been in the family for 2 generations. Developers have been eager buyers of exactly these properties, tearing down modest older homes to build much larger estates that better match the island's current price expectations. That math has slowly but steadily erased an entire category of Palm Beach resident that used to exist here in meaningful numbers. Number 14. The surprising rules that govern daily life on the island. Palm Beach maintains an unusually detailed set of local ordinances that shape everything from architecture to daily behavior, many of which would seem bizarre anywhere else in America. Certain areas restrict the height and even the color of buildings with startling specificity. Commercial signage on Worth Avenue is regulated down to font size and lighting in ways most American main streets would never tolerate. There are also unwritten social rules that carry almost as much weight as actual law. Wearing overly casual clothing into certain restaurants, even ones without an official dress code, can result in a quiet, polite refusal of service. Excessive honking, loud music from cars, or anything that disrupts the island's carefully maintained calm tends to draw fast complaints to local police, who patrol the small island with a level of attentiveness rarely seen in towns this size. It's a level of civic micromanagement that only really makes sense once you understand the underlying goal: maintaining an illusion of effortless perfection where nothing is ever allowed to look even slightly out of place. Taken together, all 14 of these threads, the hedges, the clubs, the feuds, the storms, the vanishing middle class, paint a picture of a town that has spent over a century perfecting one single skill, controlling exactly what the outside world gets to see and exactly what stays behind the gate. So, here's the real question. Is Palm Beach actually the fantasy escape it's built up to be? Or is it just a more beautiful version of the same exclusivity that exists everywhere else, with better landscaping and a much higher price of admission? If this documentary opened your eyes to what's really happening on this island, hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Would you ever want to live somewhere like Palm Beach? Or does a town like this represent everything wrong with how wealth divides a place? Drop your take below, and I'll see you in the next one.